Hi folks, the purpose of this brief mini lecture is to orient you to the academic research assignment that you have this term. So having now finished the first paper, your memoir, we're going to move from personal types of writing and very informal types of writing to the more formal and academic writing. And this is the type of writing that's going to be very important in your college career that you're going to have to do a lot in other courses. So you want to, learn as much as you can about it. Probably the biggest question that students have with research papers is, where do I begin? And that along with choosing a topic causes them the most stress. So I'm going to lay out here for you some, pretty straightforward and simple steps for you to follow that should reduce that stress for you. So probably the two most important steps involved in this whole research process is A, choosing a topic, and B, developing a research question. Now, as I was saying, you're going to be able to choose your own topics. They just somehow be related to social justice in some way. And what you want to do is choose a topic that you don't really know very much about, but that you would like to learn more about. One thing you'll notice in the photo in this slide here is the boy looking into the washer here, or the dryer, whichever this is, and that look of curiosity on his face, and he's looking inside as if to ask, well, how does this work? That's sort of what you want to ask yourself with your research questions and your topics is, well, what is it about this that puzzles me? What is it about this that I want to know? Curiosity is going to be a very important ingredient in a successful research paper. So choose something that you really truly want to know the answer to. If you're really not interested in your research topic, the chances are that you won't have a very successful research paper. So what is a research question specifically? So now you've found something, let's say, that piques your curiosity about a particular topic, but what do you do next? The next step is to take this curiosity and develop it into a very specific question. So what is it that you want to learn? And then write that out in question form. I'm personally interested in environmental issues, and so what I could do is take that very broad interest that I have in environmental justice and ask the question, well, is social justice somehow connected to environmental justice? And you don't have to have the answers to these questions. That's the point. The point is that you're going to take the time to do the research to answer the question. So now that I have a tentative research question, what do I do next? Well, what you want to do first is predict an answer to this question that you've posed, and that you predict that answer based on the knowledge that you possess right now as of this moment before you begin the research. So for me, sort of a gut feeling is that yes, social justice is connected to environmental justice. Now I don't know how, and I don't even know if this is true, but I'm sort of just stating what I think might be the case, and I'm trying to predict my answer based on the knowledge that I have now. So my problem is that I still don't know how they're connected, if at all. So what you can do before you begin the actual formal scholarly research at a library is you can actually go to the web, go to Google, and look at some websites, look at some web pages. You can even look at Wikipedia for this, because Wikipedia gives you a broad overview of a topic. But these types of sources that are on the web, these types of sites like Wikipedia, you can't cite them in a formal academic research paper because they're not considered trustworthy. And we want to only use trustworthy sources in our papers because we want our readers to be able to trust what we say. So we're only going to use the library sources in our actual paper. And web sources are okay just to get a feeling for what a topic is going to be like. So after you've done that, what you want to do is you want to take that very broad question that you have, which is, in my case, is social justice connected to environmental justice somehow? And you take that predicted answer, yes, social justice is connected to environmental justice. And you need to narrow it down because those are very big ideas. Social justice is a huge topic, and there are many types of social justice. And environmental justice is also a huge topic, and there are many instances of what and examples of what might be considered environmental justice. So it's too big, so I need to narrow it down to something more manageable. So I did a little research on the web, some preliminary research, and I found some sites that discussed mountaintop removal, and I thought that was very interesting. So now I'm going to take that topic of mountaintop renewal, and I'm going to form a new, more narrow research question. How is mountaintop removal an issue of social and environmental justice? So this is much more manageable. When I go to the library's databases and I type in my keywords for this question, I'm going to get far fewer sources, and they're going to be, focused on this only and not those other particular types of environmental or social justice. So now focused on mountaintop removal. So after I've done some of that preliminary research on the web, I can now also predict an answer to this question with a little bit of certainty. My new predicted answer is communities located near mountaintop removal sites contend with a host of dangers to their health, their safety, and their rights. So my new answer, the answer to my research question, becomes my tentative thesis. Now, what's the point of having a research question and a tentative thesis? Essentially, the point is that both of these things will help keep you focused on a particular topic in a very narrow area of a topic when you begin your research. I think one of the most overwhelming things when you write a research paper is the volume of information that you find. And it's not always easy to sort through all that. So if you have a very specific question that you want answered and you have a very specific thesis already, then that's going to help guide you and help you save a little bit of time. This doesn't mean, however, that your research question and your thesis won't change. They're both tentative because as you begin reading and looking at different sources, your perspective on the topic is going to change. So as your perspective changes, so should your question and your answer to that question. So, even when you have that question and your tentative thesis, don't feel like you have to stick with those. You shouldn't. They should change as your perspective changes. So don't get too attached to them, in other words. So after you have this tentative research question and tentative thesis statement, now it's time to begin the formal academic research, and we do this by using the library sources or any library sources. These can be databases. These can be books that the library has in its stacks. Any source that the library has is going to be fine. Now our library has a subscription to some sources, databases that are going to be very helpful to you. If you're doing environmental topics, Greenfile and Greener are going to be your best bets, but there are also several others that are very broad general research databases, and probably almost every single one of you will be able to use at least two, maybe if not all three of these, and those are Academic Search Complete, CQ Researcher, and LexisNexis Academic. And don't forget that the library also subscribes to many other databases, and that doesn't mean you can't use them. When you log into the library's database list, you'll see a brief description. So what you'll have to do is go through that list and check and read the description and see if maybe your topic might be related to one of those, and you might actually be able to find sources there as well. Now, I'm not going to go into here how to use the library's databases because the librarian will come to class or you'll go to the library and to the computer lab, and the librarian will show you how to properly use the library's databases and how to find sources for your paper. So just be sure that when you begin locating sources that you're using a variety of things. For instance, you wouldn't want only academic journals, or you wouldn't want only books. Try to find a little bit of each here and there. Use some books. Use a mixture of books, academic journals, magazine articles, newspapers, documentaries, news broadcasts. You can use as many of these as you like. I believe for your particular paper I said that you had to use a minimum of 6. The rule of thumb is that if you have a 5-page paper, you would have 5 sources. If you have a 7-page paper, you would use a minimum of 7 sources. So the rule of thumb is for every source, every page that you have, you should have a source. So if you have a 10-page paper, then you would have 10 sources, that kind of thing. So after you've gathered all your sources, the next step is the annotated bibliography. The annotated bibliography is the research gathering portion of your research paper assignment. Essentially what you'll do, I'll go into this in a little more detail in a second, but essentially what you do is you gather all that information, you read it, and you synthesize it, and you think about how you're going to use it, and then you take that information and you begin to structure an outline for your paper. And once you have an outline, then you begin your rough draft. So just as we did a process for the last paper where we did, we read example drafts, we graded an example draft, we did invention work like brainstorming, mapping, free writing. There's also a research process here, an invention process that we follow, a writing process. It's just a little different with different steps because our ultimate end goal is a little different this time. So with the annotated bibliography, what you're going to do is you're going to gather 10 sources that somehow answer your research question or are somehow connected to your tentative thesis statement. You're going to read each of these sources with a pen in your hand or somehow mark them up. As you read, you'll underline the main ideas. If questions or ideas occur to you as you read, you'll mark those in the margins. After you've read all of these, then you're going to do the annotated bibliography. Now, bibliography is fairly simple. It is very time consuming though. So it does count for half of a letter grade for the entire term simply because it's time consuming, not because it's difficult. But it's easy to get a perfect score on this if you simply follow the instructions. So if you look at this example, annotated bibliography, you'll notice that the sources are listed by the author's last name. So if you look at the Anderson there at the beginning. And then we have Bade, author last name, comma, first name, period. And you do that for the entire annotated bibliography. If there is no author, and sometimes you will have sources without an author, then you alphabetize by the first letter of the first word of the title, unless the first word is a, an, or the, and in that case you alphabetize by the first letter of the second word. So you'll take those 10 sources that you found, and then what I want you to do is to choose the 6 that you feel you're 99.999% sure you're going to use in your paper, and I want you to write an annotation for each of them. Now, what does an annotation look like? Well, it's pretty simple. It's 3 steps. The first step is to provide the MLA citation in MLA format, of course. The second step is to write an 8 to 10 sentence summary of the main ideas of that paper. So essentially what you're doing is you're taking what could be a very long source and condensing it down to 8 to 10 sentences just to communicate the main ideas of it. Now if you've read this source with a pen in your hand and you've underlined the main ideas, then this is going to be really simple because all you have to do is go back and look at what you've underlined. So the first step is MLA citation, second step 8 to 10 sentence summary of the main ideas, and then the very last step is to, in 1 sentence, explain how you think you're going to use that information in your paper. And you'll do that for each of your 6 annotations. And then again, after you've gathered all the research, you've done all these annotations, then the next step of the process of writing the research paper is going to be forming an outline, and then from there the next step is to begin your rough draft. So I imagine that you're probably going to have lots of questions this term on different aspects of the research paper. Please don't hesitate to ask me. You have multiple ways to get in contact with me. There's Facebook, there's Johnson & Wales email, there's Twitter, you have my cell number, so many ways, so don't hesitate to ask me. Plus, your class is assigned a personal librarian, and at this point you should know who that is. If not,